Joining me on the line, he is right now on the road as we record this. Ladies and gentlemen, from We Are Iowa Local 5, Sports Director over there, Jon Schaeffer, is there. What's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm doing good. B-sox just on my way up to Carroll for some state baseball, and it's a busy week here, but go figure, the Big 12 had to go throw a giant wrench into the week that is.
It's not even the Big 12. It's Texas and Oklahoma, you know?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Texas and Oklahoma. You guys think you're bigger than you actually are.
All right, so this is where we're at as far as I know right now. They told the Big 12 yesterday, hey, we're probably breaking up. And then today they officially put out the press release saying, hey, we'd like to become a member of the SEC it was 2025 season, correct?
Yeah, that's a bunch of pandering, but yes, 2025 is the target date. That's what their grant of media rights runs through, is at the end of the 2024-25 season. So that is the target date, and legally I think that's kind of binding, but we'll see what happens if that gets broken or not.
Well, that's what I was saying. That's a long ways away, and part of me wonders, does the SEC just say, hey, we'll buy it out and we'll be fine?
Yeah, I mean, they've got enough money to do it. I mean, you look at what the value of that conference will be now with OU and Texas coming in, and just the revenue that those markets will bring and those fan bases will bring to the SEC. It certainly is more than whatever the price tag is to buy out those grants and media rights. So we'll see what happens. I'm not holding my breath on, OU and Texas actually staying in the conference through that 2025 season.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I think it'll happen sooner, and especially when a couple of the guys I've interviewed over the last couple of days said that the SEC teams stand to make $20 million more a season once they're a part of it. So it's like let's just buy them now, and we'll make it up in like 2 years. It'll be fine.
Right, exactly. And financially, that's the only motive that any of this is behind this. Is it's financials. It's got nothing to do with competition, in my opinion. It's strictly financial.
Now, here's where it gets interesting to me, and this is why I wanted to talk to you a little bit about it, because the move itself, Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC, is the very surface level of this story, because between that, what's going to happen to conference, I mean, because the Big 12 it's going to be different, or it's not even going to exist, which is going to change a lot of other things. Plus you throw on top the name, image, and likeness stuff. We're on the edge of college football changing forever, right?
Yeah, I mean, I said it last night in my sportscast, that this is like a volcanic eruption waiting to happen, and these are just the first tremors signaling the giant explosion that's coming. I think that's the way to look at this, and it's going to change the entire landscape of college football as we know it. Well, we deem college football now, or at least the FBS, it's never going to look the same. And just the structure of it, the layout, what's going to happen with playoffs, etc. It's all changing, and this is really the first major move, I want to say, outside of NIL.
Let's start here, and we'll kind of break this down. The Big 12 itself, what's going to happen?
One of two things. The Mountain West Conference came out yesterday and said, hey, we'd love to get with somebody here, and I'm like, no, that's such a Mountain West Conference move to make, it
really was, wasn't it?
It's like the little brother that's like 10 years younger that wants to play baseball with the big kids. Like, hey, over it. No, you're not ready for this. It was just such a Mountain West thing to do, but you got to give them a pat on the back for trying and say maybe next time. And so I think realistically what we're going to see is the disbanding of the Big 12. I don't think adding a Cincinnati and a Houston brings up the value of Big 12 back to what it was. There just simply is no way to do that. You become a group of five, and then in the long run, if the super conference thing actually happens, you're kind of left to the wayside, or you're going to be dispersing anyway. So I think that's kind of, I tweeted it out to B-sox. I think the best way to equate this, and you've got kids, is when your kid falls off a bike and cuts himself really, really bad, you've got to sit there and say, you're going to be fine. Everything's good.
Yeah.
You're just trying to keep it calm. And inside in the back of your mind, you're like, no, this is not going to be freaking okay. Okay. Like, this is bad. What do we do? But you got to keep that calm surface. I think that's what the Big 12. That's what Jamie Pollard did and President Winterstein did last night, is kind of put on that face of everything's going to be fine. Don't panic. But I think, time will tell. I really do think the Big 12 will be no more within 4 years.
What is it about the Big 12 that no one ever wants to be a part of? Because it kind of seems like that conference that's been holding on longer than it should have. Because if you go back, what was it, about 10 years ago, where it's like Oklahoma's looking to leave, Texas looking to leave. Why is this conference so unstable?
That kind of came with the Nebraska and Mizzou moves. I mean, in Colorado, even at that, A&M. I think a big part of it is the Big 12 has always kind of been viewed as the inferior of the Power Five. Sadly, I think, I think there's this misconception because it's Middle America, so to speak. There isn't truly a major TV market represented amongst the Big 12. If you really look at it, Austin, I want to say Austin or Oklahoma City are probably the biggest TV market. So there's just not a lot of grip or a lot of substance to the viewership and a lot of outsiders' perspective. To be honest, I think the Big 12 has had a better product on the field than the Pac-12 the last few years,
totally.
For sure. They just don't have the brands. I mean, outside of OU and Texas, you've got a lot of programs waffling. And I know we're looking at football primarily with this. You've got to remember, though, Baylor just won a national championship in basketball.
Yeah.
The Baylor women are constantly powers. So are, Iowa State is up there in the top 25 consistently. So, I mean, the conference has a lot to offer, but football is the moneymaker. And so I think a lot of people look at it as the Big 12's inferior. You got to kind of laugh at the timing of it just because you've got a team like Iowa State who's now challenging Texas and OU, the perennial powers in the bulk of this conference. You and Texas are probably just tired of hearing about it. You don't play anybody in your conference. Not that Texas has been relevant either way in the Big 12, really. The move doesn't make sense for Texas to me. I think it makes sense in OU's mind because they can compete day in and day out with teams. Texas is going to be lucky to beat Ole Miss.
That's what I was talking to a dude yesterday, and I'm like, competition-wise, Oklahoma to me seems like they will be probably middle to upper of the pack, right? I mean, they're not going to. Yeah, they're not Alabama, but let's face it, they're better than the Tennessee Volunteers, probably. Yeah,
I mean they're going to be able to keep up with the LSU or the Mississippi State or A&M and compete and possibly get a bid into the SEC championship game where they'll lose to Alabama by 30 like they do in the playoffs.
But Texas, on the other hand, I think they're going to get murdered in the SEC.
I said it yesterday to somebody, B-sox. How long, all right, let's say they do keep this intact for 4 years, all right?
Okay.
Is Steve Sarkisian still the coach at Texas in 4 years? I don't think so. I know it's year one, and we haven't even seen a down of football under Steve Sarkisian, but at the same time, the way they go through coaches over there, I wouldn't trust it.
See, that's what I was talking to a guy from. I was actually talking to a guy from Oklahoma City yesterday, one of our sister stations. And I go, the Texas job seems like the job that is awesome on the outside, and then you get it in 3 days, and you're like, this job sucks.
Yeah, it's like a crown jewel of college football, but then you realize, oh wait, I have to compete and try and beat Oklahoma. Like they've won 3 Big 12 championships in 20 some years. And now you're going to go to the SEC where they're the best in the country. No offense to the Big 10.
Yeah,
I mean it's just like you're asking to get your teeth kicked in by middle of the pack SEC teams.
Yeah. You know what? When you go back to what you said at the beginning, it's about money. That's what it comes down to. They want more money. They want more prestige.
Yep.
And my crystal ball thing, kind of airline looked down at all this. My thought is I think at some point you're going to see the teams involved with Power 5 conferences right now. It's not going to look the same, but those teams, I think, are going to break away from the NCAA and do their own thing at some point. I think that's where this is leading.
Yeah,
that's my take.
I think we're gonna end up with 4 super conferences. It'll be the Big 10, ACC, SEC, and the PAC.
Yeah,
and I think we'll see name changes. It'll be the Pacific. You'll keep the Atlantic. You'll keep the Southeast, and then the Big 10 will probably change. The Central or whatever it is. And that's okay. I think in the long run that allows the football bowl series to break off from the NCAA's restrictions and money making and really manage their own football and leave the rest of the sports to their own devices. So, again, it is all about football dollars because that's your biggest revenue generator. And there's a lot of money in TV right now. And And so I think if you're Iowa State, and certainly, Kansas, you try and latch onto the Big Ten ASAP.
Yeah.
I don't think you try and sit around and see what the Big 12 is going to do. You go to the Big Ten and basically try and cut a deal, even if it's for less money out of the gates, to say, look, we want to be in your conference.
Yeah.
Just make us a member. We'll make do with it, and we'll figure it out as we go, because that's the only place I see sustainable success if you're Iowa State athletics, especially if you want to keep Matt Campbell around.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's where I wanted to go next with this. Because we haven't, at least not on this show so far, we've gotten kind of the national look and the SEC look and the Oklahoma look and all this. But when you nail it down, Iowa State over the next 5 years, what's going to be the story? Is it that they join the Big Ten? Are they going to be welcome to the Big Ten?
I think regionally it makes a lot of sense. I know there are a lot of people out there that say, well, what does Iowa State bring to the table monetarily? The fact is, if the Big Ten can have a stranglehold on the entire Midwest, that says a lot. That does a lot for them. I know there's a heavy contingency already that has Big Ten Network and BTN streaming and all that stuff. But if you take up the entire state of Iowa as a Big Ten state, you have built-in border rivals, you have an in-state rival. I think there's just a lot of appeal there from just a logistics point. Monetarily, Iowa State is growing.
Yes.
And, they bring in bowl money. They bring in NCAA tournament money. They bring in everything that you ask for in a successful program. I mean, you can't sit there and tell me Illinois is bringing in more money or is bringing in any more money than Iowa State could, or Indiana at that. Like, come on, let's be real. And then the academic side of it is the other big part. There's the AAU for the academic side of things that the Big Ten really values. Iowa State and Kansas are both AAU members, so they've got that check mark.
Yeah.
If the Big Ten wants to keep up, they're not marquee brands by any means, but they certainly keep your conference competitive. They elevate competition level, and they stretch it down into Kansas and the southern Midwest.
Like you brought up there a second ago, the only thing, and this isn't a slight against Iowa State other than their location, that's the only thing I could see the Big Ten going, you know what, we already have that market.
Yeah.
We already have that. We want to go and get, a different market or, a bigger market. Like maybe, like a Missouri goes, you know what, I don't know if we want to be in the SEC anymore, or, one of those things. But that's really the only slide I can come up with for Iowa State is it's just they're in a market they already own. So I don't know. I don't think and believe me, when I say it's the only thing, it's not even a strong only thing. It's just the only thing I could think of.
Right. And, at the end of the day, like I mentioned with Matt Campbell, if you're Jamie Pollard, you've got your premier coach, you're going to do everything you can to keep him. I don't think moving to a Mountain West or adding a couple of group of 5 teams to the conference keeps the competitive edge that he wants. He wants to play the Oklahomas and the Texases and, play those perennial powers to ensure that competition is at its highest. He's a competitor, plain and simple. And so you take that away, who is he going up against? I mean, Iowa State, it becomes the premier team maybe, but do you really want to say, hey, we're UCF 4 years ago? No, you don't.
You hit on it perfectly. You don't want to be a part of the island of misfit toys here. You want to have a plan, right?
Yeah, and the Big Ten is the best one. I know the Pac-12 has been thrown out there a whole lot, but to me, it doesn't make sense. It's going to be a cost nightmare when you're having to travel out to California for weekends on end.
Let me ask you this. Let's say in a world that Iowa State and Kansas don't become a member of the Big Ten, okay? What would be the most likely landing spot and best case scenario for, like, let's say the Big Ten is your plan A. What's your plan B?
Try and find a new plan A. I don't know. Like that's a tough one. I don't think that plan A needs to be the only plan. Don't have a contingency because you've got to go all in on A. Like, and if A fails, you sit there and you say, well, it was fun, guys.
Well, I mean,
I think you do. You do call the Pac-12, obviously, and you try and drag along some of your Texas friends because the fact is you'd rather keep traveling to Texas than going out to California for a week on end. And then you pitch it as, let's do an East-West in the Pac-12, and we'll meet in the championship games, and we'll get a little bit of crossover, similar to what the Big Ten does, to maximize our game output. I think you're going to see non-conference games disappear completely.
Yeah.
And unless it's like that season opening marquee matchup where Alabama wants to play, I don't know. Who would they even want to play now with Texas and Oklahoma there? Maybe Clemson in a week 1, but they'll meet in the championship, so who cares? So,
see,
I don't know.
that's
all a toss-up.
That's the thing about this, man. You get to the, like once you get past the surface layer, all the other stuff, it's like, okay, what happens to like you and I? Because this is going to affect them, it's going to affect you thought COVID was bad last year where they said, hey, we're just not doing non-conference games. What if they go to that all the time? What if you have an SEC that's so big that it's kind of like its own little NFL and they say, you know what, we're just doing all conference games?
And I think that's where we're heading, B-sox. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that, everyone knocks these teams when they play an FCS school. And unfortunately, that FCS game funds the entire season for those FCS schools. UNI makes a killing off of it. So it's just, it's such a rock and a hard place and a place no one really wants to be right now.
All right, we'll wrap up with this. If you're going to save let's say you're Bowlesby right now and you have to save the Big 12 with your 2 major names leaving, what do? You
call Texas A&M and say, look at how the SEC just treated you. I know there's a ton of money.
Yeah.
So let's try and find some in the Big 12. You call Mizzou, say, you guys haven't been worth a darn. Get back into your roots. And then you call Nebraska and you say, are you tired of getting kicked around in the Big 10? And that won't ever happen because it's Nebraska and they're too prideful. But and maybe you call to Colorado. You try and get some of those original Big 12 teams back into it and maybe add a Houston, maybe add a Cincinnati, see if you can get into the Florida region at all with a UCF or USF and try and just get the best of the group of 5 teams possible and pray to everything you've got that, it's going to work out.
Jon Schaeffer from We Are Iowa, Local 5, Sports Director over there. On his way to Carroll, we appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
All righty, B-Sox. Have a good one.